This is a bonus video for this week for Meltdown and Burnout, because there's some signs that you could be missing and that you need to know in order to help prevent or even mitigate burnout and meltdown. I struggle with this a lot myself, especially burnout. So join me as I share sort of my experience and what's been going on, as well as some tips and some ways to help you with your burnout and meltdowns. Join me. If you're new, welcome. Hi, I'm carolejean and I'm autistic. I will share each week social science research and interesting things that I find to share with you, and let's become socially intelligent autistic together. Join me. Let's get started. So when it comes to burnout and meltdown, when I started doing research, there really isn't a whole lot out there as far as adults are concerned. There's a ton of stuff out there about meltdowns in children and adolescents. There's some burnout information, but when it comes to talking about us, the adult autistic, there's not a ton of research out there. There's not a whole lot. And honestly, from what I'm finding and from even comments from researchers, only in the last 5 or 6 years is adult burnout even something that's on their radar. It surprised me at first, and then I thought about it. I thought, no, they're not autistics. And unless they're experienced it or they've had some autistic adults share with them what's going on in their life and experiences that they've had with burnout, they don't know. I've read a couple different definitions for burnout. Nothing that I felt really surmised burnout and what I thought defined it really well to say, yeah, that's what burnout is. Maybe you have felt the same. It's part of our vernacular. It's part of something we talk about with each other pretty regularly. What's happened, how we're recovering, maybe a symptom or a skill that we've experienced in burnout or meltdown. But I had to put together my own definition. Maybe this resonates more with you than what's out there. A burnout is when our needs consistently go unmet for long periods of time without sufficient recovery periods from stressors and result in a temporary loss of skills and abilities that take time to recover. Burnout symptoms vary from person to person, and recovery time can range from days to weeks to months, and sometimes even years. The recovery times depend on many factors, and depending on how severe the burnout is, how long the buildup took leading up to the burnout, and how the person is able to get help and support to rest and recover. That's my personal definition for burnout. Maybe that makes more sense to you. Maybe that's something that resonates with you. Meltdowns are immediate. That's something you're not stopping it, it's happening. There's some pretty good adult definitions for meltdowns out there, and I'll share that with you. Ashley McKay, who's an adult autistic who also writes and has a blog, I think wrote probably the best meltdown definition I've read. So let me share it with you. Ashley says, meltdowns are emotional avalanches that run their course whether you or the autistic person having it likes it or not. They can happen at any time and can be caused by a number of factors, including environmental stimuli, stress, uncertainty, rapid and impactful change, and much more. I think she summed it up pretty well. There might be other things that you guys would like to add to that. Definitely, let's share that. The past 2 weeks have been pretty tough for me. I knew that I wasn't feeling well when I woke up one morning. I was really dizzy. And I immediately thought, oh man, I've overdone it. Stress has gotten to me and my autonomic nervous disorder has kicked in and I've got a pretty bad case of POTS. So it could have been a lot of factors. But the other day when I was recording this particular burnout meltdown episode, I had a bit of a breakdown. And after that, I realized maybe this was a little more to it. Maybe it wasn't just one of my other health issues. Maybe this was burnout, or at least a little small one. And it's been pretty tough. Here's a clip from that day. So today I want to talk about what those symptoms look like, what they are. What are some things that we can do to become more self-aware so that we know ourselves better, so that when those symptoms start occurring, we can make some adjustments into our lives, our daily lives, so that we're either cutting back on some of the things that are really stressing us, or we're changing our structure, where we are, what we're doing, the environments that we're putting ourselves in on a consistent basis, the things that we have control over. And also making sure that we're getting that rest and recovery time so that we don't go into a full-blown burnout. There are a lot of things in our world as autistics that neurotypicals don't even realize we're struggling with. Something as simple as just getting our chores done at home. I mean, doing laundry, cooking dinner. All of those things are really stressful. It's an executive function issue. It's scheduling, it's budgeting, time and money. Finances really stress me out. That's one of my big triggers. And I'm a numbers person, which is crazy, but it's different when it's your bank account and it's not a spreadsheet. You know, it's bad enough when I experience just a burnout and it lasts for maybe a week, sometimes 2 weeks. And just talking is really hard for me. I don't want to get on the phone and call my mom, you know, and I'll send her a message and say, hey, I love you. I'm having a really rough day. I just can't talk on the phone today. Thankfully, she understands. But, you know, if you're in a situation where you have to communicate, you have to take care of things, life doesn't stop just because you're in the middle of a burnout. You've got to reach out for help, and being able to identify what's going on and being vulnerable, saying, I need help. It's really hard because you don't want to feel like a failure. You don't want to feel like you're incapable of doing something, because on any other day in your usual behavior, you can do it. You know, when you've got the energy reserves, getting those things done, it's no problem. But then there's other days where, man, that's the last thing you can do. And it's hard to admit to yourself that you can't. It's hard to talk about it. It is for me. Maybe it is for you too. But I feel like the more we talk about it with each other, the more we learn about ourselves as autistics, the more we know about why our brain works a certain way, or how it responds to certain stressors, we have a better chance of being successful. We have a better chance of not experiencing those burnouts and those days where executive function is just the hardest. I feel like if we talk about this together and we share, we start openly and honestly sharing, just with our loved ones, with our friends, with each other, and taking that and sharing it with the world and researchers and people who are trying to help and make a difference. If we're not advocating for ourselves and we're not sharing what we're going through, really sharing, then we don't have the ability to do that every day. One of the most important parts of why I've started this YouTube channel, why I've started sharing these videos, and wanted to share with you what I've learned, also share with you what I'm experiencing to start a conversation with you. This isn't a one-way street. This isn't a one-way conversation. I want to know what you think. I want to know what's going on with you. I want us to have a bigger discussion because I feel it's really important. As women, autistics, one of the scariest things about realizing that you could be autistic as an adult is knowing that most of the research out there and all the diagnostics are geared towards young males, children, and not an adult, not somebody who's figured it out, or a woman in particular. We need to talk about these things. There's actually an autistic researcher, and she was, I think, late diagnosed, if I remember correctly from the study, but she's working on a project and has released some of her latest study information and results about how to help diagnosticians detect and diagnose adult autistics, specifically women, because we learn to cover it up and camouflage it and mask and all these other terms that are being used, pick. But I feel like that's what we've got to do. We've got to have a conversation where we're coming together as autistic adults. And it's not just about talking to one another, it's about us mentoring the next generation. It's about us helping the autistics that are coming up. We've lived, we've experienced a lot of things. We've had some really hard struggles. And all of these things, we've learned something. We've garnered some nugget of information that can be helpful to the next person. And I feel like that's sort of our duty right now because there's so little knowledge, public knowledge, is for the mass majority. We need to be geared towards educating other people, but we need to be geared towards helping other autistics, the next generation, the ones coming up. We didn't have the benefit, if you're late diagnosed like me, we didn't have the benefit of some of the therapies and the early interventions that a lot of the kids have now. Hey, it's a two-way street. Teach me some things you've learned. If you're a younger person and you found out some things that have really helped you tackle some autistic issues, like burnout and meltdown, I want to know that. The person next to you that's an adult autistic that maybe they didn't know till they were in their 40s or 50s, they want to know too. We have a duty to help each other. And we have a duty to share our information. And I feel so strongly about this that I've created a private Facebook group just for us. You're welcome to come join it. I would love to have you. I want to have a conversation where we're talking about the issues every week. And I've put together a special PDF document that's a downloadable that I've put on the Facebook group. And you guys can go download it. And it's specifically about burnout and meltdown. And I'm breaking it into two different sheets. One will be a download for burnout specifically, and one for meltdown. And it talks about symptoms. It talks about pre-symptoms, because meltdowns have pre-symptoms. And there's some warning signs and things that happen before a burnout that if you become more self-aware, you can help prevent them. You can help mitigate how bad that meltdown might be or how long that burnout might happen. So I've put a lot of time into it to help you. And there's some journal prompts in there, and it's to be done step by step. It's slow. It's got to be a process that you don't just blow through the whole sheet in one day. You got to take the time to really invest in working on each step of the worksheet to take you to the next step and reflect on what you did the day before. There's a lot of science involved in journaling and how when you have traumatic events or experiences, and to me, I can honestly say meltdowns and burnouts are pretty darn traumatic. They're significant to me. I'm sure they probably are to you too. And one of the biggest things that was super scary to me was that people who have burnouts repeatedly year after year, that would be me, um, we have a tendency to have the hypothesis is, and there have been people that have said this has happened to them, they've permanently lost some of those skills and abilities. That's pretty serious. And I don't know about you, but I've worked so hard to get my skills and abilities to where they are now. The thought of losing them or not even regaining them to the state that they were in before I had a burnout, yeah, that's pretty important. And I feel like that's probably really important to you too. And I want to talk about it. And I want to be able to have more in-depth discussions about this, someplace that we can have an open discussion and not worry about maybe somebody else commenting that's not autistic. So the Socially Intelligent Autistic on Facebook, it's a private group. I'd love for you to join me, join in a discussion, take a look at the downloads. They're for you, they're free. I put a lot of time into it because I know that it helped me, and it's helped me be able to identify a burnout. It's helped me recover from it a lot faster. Before it would be months. Sometimes it verged on years. I mean, my marriage ended because I had a burnout and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know I was autistic. So there's a lot of significant things that happen, you know, and that's part of who we are. And we got to understand it better. And we got to help each other. Thanks.